started. I hope my screen is visible to everybody. Welcome, great to see all of y'all again. For those of you who are here with us for the first time, we are Spark Mentoring, and our goal is to promote your holistic professional development through easy mentorship, through easy access to mentorship, career guidance, and learning resources for everybody. We have several programs under our umbrella, ranging from workshops to one-on-one mentoring. I won't go into too much detail, but you can check them out at our website, www.sparkmentoring.info. Today's session is under the Achieve series, which is focusing on professional and peripheral skills development. And the topic for today is applying for MS and PhD abroad. It's a very popular path for a lot of students back in India, and based on the registrations we received, 99% of you are considering applying for further studies abroad. And we received a lot of questions regarding the process, like how to select universities, how to build a suitable profile, writing SOPs, cover letters, reaching out to profs, job prospects, whatnot, right? So a lot of questions, and it's our intention to get all those questions answered in the session today. And to help us with that, we have a wonderful panel of speakers. We have, first we have Tejs Choksi, who is an assistant professor at the School of Chemical and Biomedical Engineering at Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. He graduated from ICT Mumbai with a bachelor's in chemical engineering, after which he pursued his PhD in chemical engineering from Purdue University. After that, he went on to pursue his postdoctoral research at Stanford University. Next, we have Rucha Thakar. She currently works at NetBase Quid as a member of the client-facing customer success team. After completing her bachelor degrees also from Institute of Chemical Technology, she went on to pursue her master's in environmental science and management at University of California, Santa Barbara, where she pursued her interest in environmental modeling research. Next, we have Rabia Kodapanakkal, who completed her undergraduate studies from chemical engineering from ICT in 2012. She is currently pursuing her PhD in social psychology at VU University Amsterdam in Netherlands. And her research focuses on public attitudes towards big data technologies. And finally, but not last, we have Anirudh, who got his chemical engineering degree from ICT in 2020. He is currently pursuing a PhD in chemical engineering at the Nurseman Soft Matter Lab in Purdue University since fall 2020. So very recently started his grad school. And his areas of interest are fluid mechanics and probabilistic modeling of polymeric compounds. So thank you all for being here. And as you can see, we have a huge diversity in the types and levels of degrees that our panelists have pursued and where they have pursued them. So hopefully whatever path you plan to take next, we have you covered and we can get all of your questions answered. Before getting started, some quick housekeeping. This is going to be roughly a 1 hour 30-minute session. For the first 50 to 60 minutes, we will hear from each of the panelists about their journey and get their insight into the specific aspects in the process of applying. Then in the last 30 minutes, we will transition to the Q&A session. And as always, we'll have that on Pigeonhole. So you can go to www.pigeonhole.at or scan the QR code that's displaying on your screen, enter the passcode 03JUL21 to enter the Q&A page. You can post questions there, like questions that others have already posted. And if a question gets more likes, it's likely going to get answered. So also, I urge you to post questions as they come to you. You do not have to wait until the end to post your questions. The page is already live. So that's it from my end. Let's get started. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Rucha.
Sounds great. Hi, everyone.
I'm just spotlighting you, Rucha.
Okay, sounds good. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, awesome. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining, and thank you Anusha, Amar, and the whole Spark team. Super excited that this is happening. Wish we had this when we were graduating in a more formal capacity. So I'm really thankful, and everyone who's attending, you're doing a good job focusing on your career, just getting more information from sources like these is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. So awesome job. My name is Rucha. I am based in San Francisco now, but of course spent a lot of my time in ICT and in Mumbai before that. I've just had a very interesting nonlinear career path, so wanted to share my learnings from that, and specifically I'll talk a little bit more about what that journey looked like, what I considered when I was looking at universities and courses that were available, and how I evaluated them, because there are just too many good options to choose just one. Then I'll talk a little bit about financials. What does it cost? How can you offset those costs? And what are some tips that will help you do that? And then finally, just some general tips that I've observed to be helpful. Post your questions to Pigeonhole. We'll try to answer as much as we can. So my journey, I entered ICT in 2011. So I was in ICT from 2011 to 2015. And then from 2015 to 2017, pursued my master's degree in UC Santa Barbara, and then started working from 2017 until 2021. So kind of giving you a look into the previous decade of my life. In the first 3 years of ICT, I was just really happy to be there. It's a fantastic college. You get exposed to a lot of interesting things. So I started collecting a list of just activities and achievements in the first 3 years, not really knowing exactly what I want to do. So just tried to expose myself to a lot of different ideas. So I did my first internship in the second year summer of ICT. That was at BARC. And that was looking at how I did my surface coating degree from ICT. So was interested in polymers and surface coating, like that field. So at BARC, I was just learning under two scientists who were working on polymeric technologies. In my second year, I interned with a company. So I interned with Reckitt Benckiser in Gurgaon, and that was again focused on polymeric formulation. So really a technical internship, but in a more commercial capacity. And then from these internships, I was able to gather some research experience, and I was able to basically observe the process of taking an idea, working on it, and then how it becomes a research poster or a research paper. So I worked with the scientists and supported them as they were going through this process. So it was a good learning experience for me. At college, then, I was involved in being the editor of Bombay Technologists, which is our institute's journal, and then also organized a few events just across all the festivals that we have. Then coming back from my internship in the third year, which was from RB, again, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but wanted to keep my options open. So applied for the GRE and TOEFL and kind of just started preparing for that. And I think that was August of my final year. Simultaneously, I was also working on the final year thesis. There were a few kind of technical competitions happening, so presented posters at those competitions, just tried to expose myself to a lot of different opportunities and really polish those communication skills. And then started applying to graduate schools. You can see I wasn't really sure even at this point which field I wanted to pursue. So I ended up choosing, actually, that was something a little bit more hybrid than just the traditional PhD or just the traditional MBA. So I'll speak a little bit more about that. And then did I stop my video? Sorry. And in the, after my final year, I pursued a third internship during the summer between graduation and then starting my UCSB, just because I was a little bit bored and wanted to fill my days. Then started work at UCSB. Again, a fantastic place to be. was pursuing coursework in just the program that I had chosen, which was environmental science and management, and then also was pursuing a full-time kind of research assistantship on the side. And this was more to understand, is this a field where I can do a PhD in? Am I liking this research? What does it really mean to go deep into this area of study? On the side, I was also pursuing some other part-time roles. These were, grader positions, so where you have to correct papers of undergraduate students in support of the teaching assistants or in support of the professors. This was maybe like 5 to 10 hours a week, so not a huge commitment, but helped me earn some extra pocket money and just again exposed me to a completely different department that I wasn't formally a part of. And then also pursued a few other part-time roles. So, UCSB and these universities have these departments or programs around outreach. So they want to encourage high schoolers or other kind of people who are interested in STEM to pursue STEM degrees as a full-time, in a full-time capacity. So I was involved in some outreach type programs like that. And then finally graduated from UCSB in 2017 and have been working ever since. That's kind of what my journey looks like. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what my profile was like at different stages. So when I applied to UCSB, what did my profile look like? When I started working, what types of achievements or accomplishments or just experiences I had accumulated. I was telling you I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. So I just evaluated what all is out there. So on the extreme left is kind of your all the technical programs that you have access to. So these could be either MS programs or these could be PhD programs. For students from ICT, this is going to be more directly related to chemical engineering, material science and engineering, or biochemical engineering. And then if you have specialized in something specific, then you will have those types of programs available to you as well. For example, a PhD degree in textiles, or specifically a PhD in polymer or macromolecular sciences. On the extreme right, there is the commercial world, right, where typically you would enter the industry just by starting to work at a company or by doing an MBA. And the type of exposure you would get there is just more general management principles. You might specialize in finance or marketing, etc. I didn't want to be on the extremes of this spectrum. I kind of wanted to be somewhere in the middle where I'm using my technical knowledge, but I'm also learning a little bit more about the management or just something else that is related to make the technology work, if that makes sense. So nowadays there are these combo fields, as I am calling them. These are your traditional kind of MS fields or your traditional science fields. And then there's a layer of either management or policy applied to it, or a layer of data and analytics applied to it. So that's like environmental science and management, or environmental science and data analytics, or business, like supply chain management, operations research. These are kind of fields where I would say these are derivations of applied math or applied statistics or something like that. So I ended up choosing environmental science and management, mostly because I was telling you I have my degree in surface coating. I worked a lot on researching kind of bioplastics or other types of green plastic technologies. Both my internships also exposed me to that. So I had some experience in environmental science, broadly speaking, and I thought I would be able to make a convincing case for why I want to learn the management side when it comes to the environmental issues. And genuinely, I was just interested in LCA, which is a type of environmental assessment technology, and other technologies and other discussions that were happening in this field. So that is how I kind of ended up choosing environmental science. There are other degrees available to you. These are like masters in engineering management, masters in analytics, I'm sure chemical modeling of some sort. If you start looking into these kind of combo fields, I'm sure you'll find that there is a lot out there. So how do you go about finding all of these things, right? I would look at it in a 3-step way. The first one is just discover programs. So whenever you look at any universities abroad, they offer what are called programs. So there's a school of something, so school of engineering, then there's a department, so Department of Material Science, and under the department there are PhD programs, master's programs, MIng programs, stuff like that. So the first step is program discovery. The second is people discovery, because of course there are people who run and support and participate in the program. And then third is, once you have discovered kind of what's out there, overlapping that with what you are, what you want to do, what stage of life you are at, and what your definition of success looks like. So when you're evaluating programs, tactically speaking, start with Google and start with university websites. So go to the university, you'll have a drop down where you'll see the under academics or under programs, you'll see kind of what types of departments or things are offered by that university. And under that specifically, if you're looking for masters, check the courses that are offered. And so that's how you will know what the university is focused on and what you will actually get out of the university. Some universities even provide information about the exact curriculum that you might follow. So there's a lot of information out there. The second step is, read the websites of professors. So every university has just a short bio of professors on their website, and then also read Google Scholar websites of the professors. So go up, look up what are the most recent papers that they have published. So if you're looking for like an MS or PhD type of program, that Google Scholar as well, you'll know what the professor is most recently working on, or anyone that you're interested in, what they've been working on. And you can also track kind of where they started, what types of papers they published in the beginning to what they have, what they're working on now. So you can see their evolution. And that will help you understand just at a more nuanced level, what type of work is happening and what you can expect to get out of the program. And then second component under people discovery is look up who graduated. So you're going to be an alumnus of that program. Look up who else went there and what does their journey look like. LinkedIn is a great tool. You can see all of the different experiences. So again, you can track the evolution of a person. And then, for reflection, think about, does the first step of the alumnus who you're looking up match with what you want to do? So for example, if you know for sure that you want to be in the industry, that you don't want to go the academic route after your PhD or master's, but you see that a lot of people who are graduating from these programs are actually ending up doing postdocs or are choosing the academic career, then you will know what type of value the program is delivering and if that matches with what you want to do. And then talking about just applying, you can track the evolution of who went to that program, right? So think about what their profile was when they applied, and does it match your profile? Or do you need to do a few more things, collect a few more experiences, maybe wait 6 months to apply so that just you have a stronger chance of getting in? And then definitely think about what will it take for you to be successful during and after graduation. So it's possible, you're in a different country, you need to invest some time. You may need to develop some networking skills, some conversation skills to be able to land the jobs that you want. So think about not only from a curriculum perspective that you'll need to ace your grades and you'll need to participate in internships and do all of that, but holistically as a person, what will you need to develop in your personality to be successful? Anusha, keep me honest on time. Choosing universities, I'll go through this a little bit quickly. I'm sure other people are going to talk about this a little bit, and we have covered this in other sessions too. So again, I divide this into 3 criteria. There are going to be some decisions that you have to make before you join. So that's going to be about the costs that you incur. That's mostly the biggest consideration. And the second is location. We are in a global society, so I would say access to job markets can vary depending on, or depending on the profile, your profile, and how much you're able to network and just luck a little bit. But typically, if you are near a major city, you have access to that job market, or you have access to a greater number of companies that are operating. You can go to them for interviews, you can go for internships, pursue something in a more part-time capacity just while you're doing your program. And then weather plays an important role for some folks. certain places in the US and other countries are snowy, they're a little bit gloomy in winter. So if you are someone who is susceptible to that fluctuations in weather, then consider that while choosing. Then there are some things that you need to think about just while doing the coursework. So what type of courses are available, how much, what else can you accumulate in terms of experiences as you're pursuing that program? And then after, what types of jobs are going to be available when you graduate? So think about these things. And I would say equal weightage to all of these points, in my opinion, but it might differ for other people. Again, I'll run through this slide quickly. So there are typically six things that go in your application packet. So the top three are kind of your written experience and your words of where you express what you want, what you have done, and what you want to do, what your ambition is. So that's typically your resume, your statement of purpose, and then some universities require what is called a personal statement. So that's where you kind of explain your journey from a more personal capacity and stuff like that. And then there are scores. So there's your GPA, there's the GRE, TOEFL. Some universities are not requiring GRE nowadays, so just check out exactly what your program needs. And then all programs definitely need what are called supporting documents. So these are transcripts from your college or anywhere where you have studied. So if you've pursued like a German language course on the side, for example, make sure that you have that transcript of that course. And then original work is the work that you have done. So any type of research paper, review paper, posters, patents, all of that would go in that kind of supporting document section, as well as in your resume. Statement of purpose, we're planning to have a more in detail conversation about this, maybe another session in later this year. So we'll talk more about that then. But I wanted to just give a quick overview of what an SOP is, because it was a question asked. So SOP is where you explain what you want to do and convince somebody that you have accumulated experiences that will help you achieve your goals. So in the statement of purpose, you want to start with the purpose. So what do you want to do in life? And why is that important to you personally? How does that university course specifically help you achieve that purpose? And then kind of talk about yourself. Why do you think you're a good fit? What have you done that will make you successful in that program? So if you've done polymers and you're choosing a polymer PhD, of course, you have the background that's needed to be successful. And then specifically, what will you bring to the table? A lot of these programs are global, they are diverse, and they really want different voices at the table. So make sure to highlight what you have done. If you've participated in an NGO or if you've done a really specific type of research, highlight that. I think in my program when I applied for master's, I think the only one who had this interest in polymers plus the environment. And that was really unique. I didn't know that at the time. So you might not know that what you're interested in, what you've done is unique, but it really can be. And then end with your purpose and ambition. So cost is an important factor. I wanted to talk a little bit about that. There are three components again: tuition fee, living expenses, and then just one-time things that you have to do to be able to move to a different country. In tuition fee, there are two styles. So some courses charge a flat fee. So they'll charge you per semester, per quarter, and then you can take as many courses as you'd like in that semester or quarter. And that's the flat fee structure. The second is fees per credit. So a course has some credits, like one course typically has 3 or 4 credits, and then every credit costs maybe anywhere between $20 to $40 to $100. So depending on your program, you might need to do 100 credits, and if every credit costs X dollars, you can estimate what the tuition fee would be like. What I have observed is approximately this can be between anywhere from 10K to 40K per year, depending on the university and ability to offset that cost. Then living expenses, that's your rent, that's your electricity, utilities means electricity, trash, water, all the things that you accumulate on top of rent, groceries, and just other things that you need to do to live. That can be anywhere between 500 to 1,000. It can be less or more depending on your lifestyle. And then there are one-time expenses. So, if you add this all up, you'll have a good sense of what it's going to cost you. And then there are ways to offset that cost. You have scholarships available to you. you have funding available to you through universities. So the type of funding here is where they would provide you an hourly salary as well as coverage of your tuition fee in a partial or full capacity. And then there are hourly jobs which don't have any tuition coverage, it's just the salary. So in terms of scholarships, there are a lot of loan scholarships programs. Just look it up on Google. There is J.N. Tata, Narottam Seksaria, the INLEX scholarship. I think the Mahindra Foundation offers something. Typically, these are loan scholarships. They'll involve an application and an interview. And a lot of ICT folks have gotten this. We have an awesome like alumni base. So tap into that as a resource. If you're interested in any of these, want to know more, feel free to like just cold message that person on LinkedIn saying, hey, I'm interested, I want to learn more. Then there are targeted scholarships. So these are for, I've seen these for women specifically, but there are targeted scholarships available for kind of disadvantaged communities, other communities that you may be a part of, or if you want to do something very specific, like if you want to do nano science, there might be a scholarship specifically available for that. There are travel grants. So there are institutions which may not cover like thousands of dollars, but they might be able to provide you a few $100s to cover the expense of your flight. So there are definitely small institutions offering this type of help. And there are recruitment fellowships from universities. So this may range anywhere from $1,000 just to welcome you to the university to completely covering your costs. Email the university staff. Every university has this admissions email. Email them and ask them, is this available to me? Do I need to make a separate application? What can I do to highlight my eligibility for these fellowships in my profile? Then for funding through universities, there are research assistantships and teaching assistantships. Typically, if you work for 20 hours or like full time, these positions will cover your tuition. Or they may cover it in a partial capacity. So you may do 2 grader positions, for example, and cover the full cost of your tuition that way. So just again, look these opportunities up on the university website, reach out to your network, so your like college alumni, but then also reach out to professors. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I emailed professors extensively when I was pursuing my master's and expressed interest in working in their lab as a research assistantship in a research assistant capacity, and I was able to get some funding starting from day one. So this really works. You increase your chances just by asking. And then hourly jobs are on-campus jobs. These could be work in the library or work at the local cafeteria and stuff like that. There could be the programs that I mentioned, or there could be off-campus internships depending on the city that you're in. How to increase your chances of funding? Just ask for it. A lot of people don't do it. Reach out to university staff, reach out to professors. If you don't get a response, and if you see that there are people in the, students in the lab who are open to mentoring, like they've stated that on their LinkedIn profile, feel free to drop them a message and see what happens. There's a lot of competition. A lot of professors definitely get a lot of emails. So don't be disheartened if you don't hear back. Don't take it personally. Just be persistent. Keep following up. You just need one person to say yes. This is an example email that I had used while reaching out to professors. So you'll have these slides later, but the anatomy is say hi, tell who you are, tell why. Just at the start, tell why you are reaching out, explain what you have done and why you are interested in working with that specific person, and then ask for guidance. So if they don't have any research assistantships available for this year, ask for guidance on what else can you do, how can you collaborate, etc. A lot of people advise on getting good diverse experiences, but depending on where you are in your journey, you might not know where to get these experiences. So wanted to list things that my friends have done and that my network have experiences that they have accumulated. So you can do internships in a lot of awesome research institutions in India, NCL Pune, BARC, ISRO, IISc, great institutions. I don't know if all of them offer summer internships, but ask. You may not know what works out. Then there are startups started by our own college alumni or alumni of different IITs. They are often strapped for resources. You might find some opportunities there to learn. There are some international summer programs like the DAAD by Germany. There's a program out of Canada, which is the MIT ACS. Just try, look these up. You might find more. There are websites like studyabroad.com, etc., which will help you find more such programs. And then there are Hutke events, which is what I call these. These are things that I didn't do, but I wish I'd done. This is, Model United Nations, any sort of like conferences and collaborations with US universities, UN programs, World Bank programs. This will just boost your confidence and give you exposure. Then I want to leave you with some good, some general tips that I've found helpful. Just keep calm, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing the right things. You're listening to this talk. You are investing in your growth. So have a lot of fun, but be very purposeful about building a career. College, time is really valuable, and college days are especially really valuable. Don't squander the valuable time that you have. Be very purposeful. Seek experiences that are meaningful and that will expose you to different ideas. Build your written, oral, and oral communication skills, especially in a formal setting. I am terrified of public speaking, but I only have gotten better by practicing. So do that. When you speak publicly, you'll hear yourself speak. It'll boost your confidence. It'll convince you that you can do great things. So I cannot state how much this has helped me. And then just reach out to people, reach out to ICT seniors, but don't just say, hey, I need your help. Do some research before reaching out to them. Ask them targeted questions. Say, hey, I've done this research, but I'm confused about this X thing. And you're more likely to get a response, and that's a better use of your time and your seniors' time. And then during applications, start early. Don't wait until November to start. Start in May, start in August. Just because if you fail, you have time for some, more time to make up and boost your profile. Don't hesitate to ask. This is not something that I was particularly good at. I hesitated, I was nervous, I was afraid of hearing no, and just asking for something, like it felt like I was begging, but it's not that. You are in a point in your career where you need people to support you, so ask. And then be persistent. It's possible that you might not be successful in the first attempt, but consistency will compound. So just keep at it, and just reach out to any of us if you need any help. We're so happy to help out.
All right. Thank you, Rucha. Lots of valuable information there. I think one key takeaway is don't be shy, just ask for it if you need something. So be persistent, people. Again, if there's a lot of information here, so don't worry if you've not got all of that in this one listen. We'll have this on our website up, so you can always go back and listen to the talk. And as Rucha said, she's agreed kindly to share her slides, so we'll have that. We'll have those handouts sent out to you guys. All right, so next we have Anirudh, and he'll give us some quick insight further into university selections and also his journey. So Anirudh, take it away.
Yep. So thanks a lot, Rucha, for that lovely presentation. So I'll be building on a lot of stuff that you have said already. I'll be mainly focusing on a very small base that we are trying to cover overall in this entire meeting. I'll be discussing PhD applications to the US primarily. So I'm just giving you this rough outline, my journey, and like how do students need to evaluate universities and programs that are available. How do you get internships, and how does international exposure matter nowadays? And finally, some broad overview of everything. So this was my academic journey pretty much. So I entered ICT in 2016. So I'm pretty young actually. So I entered ICT in 2016, and I just got done with my JEE, and I was pretty stressed. And it was kind of like a PTSD kind of thing after JEE. So I took like an entire year to get over that crap. And I spoke to my professors initially. When I looked at my counterparts getting into places like IIT and stuff, there was a major fear of missing out. And I was like, I had to start working hard, and you have to build my profile and stuff to stand out. So when I spoke to my professors, their basic advice was just take a break. Just take the first year off, just study, work on your academics. And that's what I did. What I did is also during this time is around like the third semester, when you get exposed to like core stuff, I tried finding my niche in that in that period. So my niche, I found my basic interests lie in mathematics and fluid mechanics. So I got exposed to like the nitty-gritties of fluid mechanics in the third semester, and that's when I realized that this might be something I would like to do in the long term. I did not intern anywhere during the summer of 2017, which is my first year to second year summer. But what I did is during the winter break of 2017, I actually took like I had a two-week or 3-week stint at Reliance, where I kind of got exposed to the entire workflow of how these R&D labs work at big organizations. Once 2018 started, I came back from Reliance and I joined Professor Ashwin Patwardhan's lab, who's the HOD right now at the Department of Chemical Engineering. And I started working on multiple projects related to fluid mechanics. So I worked with a team. We were 3 of us, and we won this competition at IIT Bombay called Aesiotropy. And it kind of boosted my confidence. And I felt like I could do something in this further if this is what it takes. So what I realized very early on is that actually I need to give a hat tip to Tej for that. In February of 2018 or something, he visited our batch and he gave us this really motivational speech about how students in other universities, they apply abroad for internships, and that international exposure really matters. And that kind of sparked an interest, and I felt that there's a definite need to do this. And I'm like a freak on LinkedIn. I keep exploring LinkedIn a lot. So what I used to observe is that people who are from ICT in 2010, 2012, 2014, their profiles are very different from someone who is in like 2017, 2018. Things have progressed over the last 10, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. In like 90s or early 2000s, you could get into a great university by just keeping your academics sorted and doing like one internship. But now times have changed. People value undergrad research a lot, which is why in 2018, I started planning ahead, and I applied to some professors abroad. And luckily, I got an internship opportunity at the University of Kentucky, where I went and spent the summer of 2018 there. And I worked on this really interesting project related to turbulent fluid flows. And luckily, I worked really hard during that time. Initially, that project wasn't funded. I did not receive any funding. So I had to take some help from my parents. So I spent, I would say, something like 2 lakhs initially. But once I went there, and I used to work over weekends, I used to work a lot through the entire week. And at the end of the entire stint, the professor whom I worked under, he was extremely happy with me, and he ended up giving me $3,500, which more than made up for what I had spent. So this internship was basically, I did not lose any cash. Then when I came back, I continued doing my projects at ICT, and then in our Department of Chemical Engineering, we are expected, at least at that time, we were expected to do this compulsory implant training, which is why I took up an opportunity at Henkel, which is one of the leading adhesive manufacturing companies. And around this time, when I joined Henkel and I worked there during my summer of 2019, my paper somewhere in November, my paper got published, which was my research work in Kentucky. And at this time, I started focusing on my GRE, TOEFL, SOPs, LORs, those things. And once I got that through, I applied to Purdue and I got into Purdue. And now one more aspect that I would like to add here is, once you get into the PhD program, there are many a times you feel that there are just like 2 or 3 professors or 1 or 2 professors in your field. So what you do is, how do you ensure that now, so that's what things are changing now. In the olden days, what used to happen is they kind of assume that you don't know anything. They still do. They assume that you don't know anything. And they're fine. They just look at how interested you are in what they're going to do. Nowadays, things, people will come up with crazy undergrad experience, research experience. So it's good to show the professor that you have a solid backing and you know what you're talking about. So what I did is, when my semester started at Purdue, during the initial 2 to 3 weeks, I wrote this extensive review. I sat the day and night and I wrote this review for like 120, 130 pages. And I submitted it to these 2 guys who I wanted to work with. And they were both pretty impressed. And I just, so they were happy to take me. And I also focused on my academics. So by doing these things, you can kind of ensure that you will get into these labs for, for graduate studies. This is just an extra point that I'm adding here. But now the main thing that I want to focus on is this internship guide. There are 3 types of internships possible, at least from a chemical technology and chemical engineering perspective. Research internships that can be broadly classified into 2 types, either in India or abroad. So in India, what happens is there is not much of input of cash from your side. And neither are these internships funded by the professor's end, unless you're doing something like an SRFP that's backed by the Indian Academy of Sciences, where you're getting paid. So the push by the professor is not always very high to get some sort of output from you. And if you want to get some sort of tangible output, you have to really persist with these internships. ICT, IISCs, some of the IITs that are named here, Bombay, Madras, and Kanpur, these and many CSIR labs, these places are fantastic for research. If someone says, that India does not have great research, it's utter bullshit, because there is amazing research happening in India as well. And there are some great professors at all these universities. It's just that you have to keep persisting to rise up their ranks and make them feel that you're important to their lab. Abroad, however, every internship, every opportunity is looked at from a perspective of you're being paid for your time. So everything needs to have a tangible output, which is why the amount of persistence that's required from your end is, if you're funded, that is, the persistence required from your end need not be so high, but your output can be really, really high over a large period of time, because the professor also takes an active interest in this process. The second type of internship that is possible is an industrial R&D. This in India currently is virtually non-existent. But although there are things that there is a culture that's developing, and I guess within the next 10 to 15 years, we could see a big influx of these kind of opportunities. The third kind of internship that's possible is a process engineering internship. I would just give you 2 points. Do not expect hardcore work. Do not expect crazy calculations. Then they'll give you something that you're going to turn over the revenue of the company or something. Nothing is going to happen with it. You're expected to go and observe. You're expected to go and just see what's happening. That's what you do go and do. Don't expect something special. In these plants, there are 2 types of plants. There's one, a batch plant and a continuous plant, which I guess everyone is aware of. In these batch plants, you get more of an operational exposure. You also delve into concepts like supply chain management, which I feel in the long run is something that's ubiquitous and everyone needs to know it. And when you look at something like a continuous plant like Reliance or something, or a BPCL, things are moving like clockwork. You don't need to touch anything. You don't need to see anything change. Nothing will change in that place. The SOP is perfect. Everything is crystal clear. You just have to stay there and do whatever you're asked to do. That's it. So these are the kind of internship opportunities that someone gets from a typical engineering, chemical engineering university, like ICT, you could take. So as I'm saying that this abroad exposure is very important in today's day and age. And I guess Tej will focus more on those details as well in his presentation. Just one small slide, but I just wanted to show you, this is actually one of the mails that I wrote to a professor, and it worked out, but I did not go to that guy eventually. But this is just a broad overview of, you just keep things very simple, keep it very short, give a very short description of what you have been doing and what you aim to do, and just attach your resume or SOP or whatever, like a statement of purpose separately. If they're interested, they'll read. If they're not, they won't give a shit. So after a point, they'll just invite you on a Zoom call if they really want to continue the discussion, and you take things forward. Don't write a long drawn email. People don't have the time. Once someone becomes an advisor, things become really, really difficult, and they are busy with advising their PhD students. They're busy with writing new proposals, getting new grants, and writing, submitting conference abstracts, etc., etc. So there are a lot of things on their plate. So you have to be very careful and you have to value their time a lot. One very important thing: how to research universities for a PhD. Now, this is my way of looking at it. I feel that there are 3 steps, but these are not necessarily in the order of importance. So the first thing is a subject reference. One thing that I get a lot of queries, since I was I used to coordinate all the application procedures when I was at ICT. So I get a lot of queries from my juniors, and they say, I'm not sure which field to go to. You don't need to be sure. Many people aren't sure, and it's fine. It's totally fine. So just have a basic broad overview of what do you think a day-to-day workplace would look like. What do you think, like when you go into the lab in the morning, what's the equipment that you're going to switch on? Are you going to work on some modeling? Are you going to work on some experimental stuff? Have a broad idea. Like these are the fields, like these are very broad classifications of fields. Like some categories that people have is, I hate biology, I don't want to touch biology. Oh, I love biology, or I hate mathematics, something like that. Just have a faint idea of that, you'll be fine. You get in universities, like most of the universities in the US, they have a central process after which you get 2 to 3 months in which you can interact with all the advisors, and you get a very good idea of things. So you don't need to worry about that at all. Research group at universities are very, very important. This thing is, there is no right answer to this. This purely depends on your style, what you want, and what the advisor is going to give. If you have an advisor who is in his early 30s or mid 30s, the person is mostly going to push for tenure, and that person is going to push really hard for papers and high quality papers. You could expect quick work. You may not be able to get sit for like 4 years and publish a paper. That may not happen. He may or she may expect you to deliver within the first year, because when they're seeking tenure, it's a very important phase in their lives. And I guess Tej could speak a little more on this. So, and the second phase that a professor is at is when they've just attained their tenure and they've become an associate professor or a full-time professor. These labs generally, they prefer delving into new domains. They suddenly, you're seeing that they're taking challenges. They're taking new topics that they've never explored before. And what happens is, so you may be interested in that. So one drawback for that could be, since that person, it's not their stronghold till now, so then you may not get like extremely valuable inputs. You and they both would have to learn together at the same time. That could happen at sometimes. And sometimes when projects may not work, so you don't have a great direction in which you have to go. The other way is when your professor is really like well known, really old, like something like 60s or 70s, and the person is like, he's at the top or she's at the top of their field. They've been editors in chiefs of journals and stuff. So these people are really busy. So they are needed by everyone. Everyone wants their blood, and they find it very difficult to give each student some time to talk to. So you have to see whether you want an advisor who's in what stage of their career are they in. That's one aspect. Secondly, how many times do they want to interact with you? Are they too hands-on? Are they too hands-off? Nothing is good, nothing is bad. It purely depends on your match. Now, I like to meet my advisor regularly, maybe once a week, twice a week. So I chose a young advisor as opposed to a very old advisor who would probably meet me once a month. That's my fit. Everyone has a different view. The last step, which is the miscellaneous thing, rankings, don't look at them. For a PhD, no one should care about the rankings. I could never ever tell whether an assistant professor at Purdue may be better than a very amazingly well-known person at Kentucky, which is not so highly ranked. But you can never predict these things. It's just that when you're applying to these universities and you're going, you have a general idea that you won't go wrong with the university. So if you get into one of the top universities, you won't go wrong. That's the general idea. But if you have a great rapport with a top professor at a small university, go for it if you're comfortable with it. These things, no one should advise you on this university is better ranked than this. Don't listen to that stuff. I never like those kind of discussions, and I feel they're utterly pointless. Secondly, now I as Rucha was mentioning, weather, I really get affected by weather. So when I came to West Lafayette for the first time, I was very depressed for the first month. I was like, this place is snowing throughout, like for 6 months. Okay, it's so cold, and I really need company. So you need to ensure that you have the right people you're talking to. You have all your friends. You have some Indians here. That those factors come into play. So you need to have that idea in your mind. And these things, I'm not going to underplay the importance of this, because mental health is a factor you have to consider during a PhD. It's a long process. You're going to be alone. You have to find your peer group and your friends you want to talk to. I still have a long way to go, but this is what I have understood till now. So Yeah. Coming to the parts that I guess you guys will relate to more for the students who are seeing this, SOPs and GRE and TOEFL. SOP is the most important thing in your entire application. You need to tell a compelling story. You cannot just write some run of the mill SOP and expect to get into a great university. Even if you have a great profile, a bad SOP can screw things up, and you don't want to get into that path, because an SOP is something that's simple, because all that it requires is time investment. It does not need some brains. It does not need some flowery English or something. You just need to put in some time and you will be fine. Come up with the first draft really early. If you're applying in November or December, come up with the first draft, I would say in July, and show it to many people. Show it to professors who you have a good rapport with. Show it to your friends at other universities. Show it to seniors who have already reached the universities. Show it to juniors as well, because they sometimes may point out mistakes that you may never know of. Now that's the most important thing. The GRE TOEFL, I feel it's no longer too important. GRE, I would say it's just a number now. Just give it. Don't care too much. Don't spend 2-3 months doing GRE. It won't help at all. You're not going to prove a point by getting a 340. No one cares. Get a score above 315. You're sorted. You don't need to worry about anything. Focus on the SOP. That's all that matters. TOEFL, on the other hand, I would say concentrate on it, not more than a week. I would not put anything more than a week in TOEFL. Just try to ensure that you get like a 24 up in all the sections, because in most of the universities, I guess the cutoff is something like 18 or something. But just ensure if you get something above a 24, you'll be safe. You don't need to worry about it. Sometimes in certain universities, you have like this thing where if your speaking score is less than 27, then you have to take these extra remedial classes for during a summer or something. So if you can just work hard a bit on the speaking, then just get a 28 or 29 and you'll be sorted. You don't need to worry about that as well. Sorry, that was my GRE. And the last thing, as Rucha mentioned, funding opportunities. So in the US, most of the PhD programs are fully funded for the top 50 universities at least. Funding opportunities, yes, there are multiple scholarships like JN Tata, KC Mahindra, Narottam Saxena. I have been a Narottam Saxena scholar for 2020. So I was lucky enough to get to be a member of that coveted team. So and the other things the last thing that I would like you to take away from this is internships can be funded if you persist and work really hard. There is no hard and fast rule that bahut paisa jane wala or something. Just give it all. Things will work out, and it's an investment in the long term. These things matter a lot. So just give it your best and take it up, because I think these things are really valuable. I think Tej would have a better viewpoint because he's right now in the academic sector, so he would be able to point out the importance. But from what I have seen in my short stint in whatever thing I have done, but I feel that it really pushes your profile to another level. And if I guess in the next 15 years, a foreign internship is going to become ubiquitous. Like if you don't have it, you're probably not going to stand a chance. So like to start aiming for it right now. And as we have like the whole compulsory IPT thing and all, so I guess it's since most of these applications, DAD, MyTax, SNBOs, these things matter really if you apply in the third year. But you can always just mail professors and stuff and just try your luck. Okay, and who knows, the IPT system might change. Then you might just get many opportunities than what already exist. So that's all. I apologize if I overshot my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anirudh. That's okay. That was really, really good. Lots of, again, very good information there. I really loved your dissection on choosing a university and figuring out the professor that you want to work with. I wish I had known all of that information when I was applying, because I think I was just shooting for it in the dark, not knowing anything about that. So very, very good dissection. So yeah, I think the next person up is Tej. As Anirudh mentioned, he's already in the academia, so maybe he can give us some extra insight into this process that would help all of us. All right, we can see your screen, Tej, and you're muted.
Awesome. Thank you, Anirudh and Rucha, for a nice overview. They've given excellent resources, and I think these slides will be available. So please do keep them in use for future reference. I don't want to spend too much time behind my background because I want to keep time for your questions. So let's skip this slide. The bottom line is that I graduated in 2012 with a bachelor's in chemical engineering from ICT. I went straight ahead to do my PhD at Purdue. I worked with Professor Jeff Creeley in computational catalysis. I then moved to Stanford for my postdoc and straight away moved to NTU in a tenure track position. You can see that my path is very linear. This is an exception, not the norm. From some of my friends' profiles, I've not put their names, but I have shown their career paths. For instance, I know one of my colleagues in academia who spent 4 years in the industry after bachelor's, then went on to do a PhD, a postdoc, and entered academia. Conversely, there are several people I know who've done a master's, and then because they liked research or they felt that was the next best option, they went on to do a PhD right after finishing their master's before entering the industry. So here also it's a circuitous route. Finally, I know one colleague who did a master's first, then a PhD, then spent some time doing a postdoc at a national lab before entering industry. So the bottom line is that you can do a PhD at any point. You don't have to do it as soon as you graduate. If you want to get work experience before going down that route or do a master's before going down that route, do so by all means. So next is, since I am from a university in Singapore, let me just introduce the Singaporean research context with respect to 3 aspects. So first is that over the last 15 years, due to the collective efforts of the universities, the research funding ecosystem, as well as the kind of mentoring, research, and teaching done at the universities, NTU and NUS are now on par with many of the top research-focused universities in EU or North America. I wouldn't delve into rankings as Anirudh said, but I would say that they are on par with an R1 university in the US, if you want to put it that way. Second, Singapore is really invested in science, in research, in a knowledge-based economy. 1% of GDP of this tiny country is invested in R&D. Large chunk of it goes to academia, but a significant chunk also goes to the national lab in Singapore. I have put a hyperlink to Singapore's research initiatives called the RIE 2025 plan, and you can go into that route. In my view, one key distinguishing factor of a PhD in Singapore versus the US is the graduation rate, the graduation time. So a PhD in Singapore is fixed as 4 years because the student's research scholarship is fixed as 4 years. Very few cases, very few instances can cause an extension like a global pandemic, but that too it's extended to 5 years. So if you're looking for a place where you know for sure that this is the end goal and come what may, you've got to finish by this time, then Singapore's a good place because you know that 4 years from when you begin, you'll most likely have your PhD. The research scholarships, like with the US, come with a tuition waiver contingent on performance. And the research stipend is on par with what people get in the US. So here is one kicker, in my opinion, the real difference between the US and Singapore. If you had to think of one place on earth which unites MIT, Cambridge, CNRS, the TU Munich, ETH Zurich, that's probably Singapore. It is all these universities have set up research campuses in this tiny red dot. They have faculty who spend 2 to 6 months every year in their research campuses here. They collaborate with faculty at NTU and NUS. Students in all our research groups get to work with eminent faculty in these universities. So it is really a microcosm of researchers across multiple melting pots. You can look out this CREATE campus. CREATE stands for the Campus for Research Excellence and Technical Enterprise. It is an effort by the Singapore government to attract universities within Singapore where they set up such research centers. Despite starting just 18 months ago, my group actively collaborates with researchers at Cambridge and CNRS. So just to give you an idea that if a pipsqueak of an assistant professor can forge such collaborations, you can imagine what kind of collaborations more senior faculty also have. So keep this in mind as well when selecting universities. So since we are all here, I'd like to pull this plug. Also as a response to some of the questions which have come up in Pigeonhole. NTU has a brilliant program called the NTU India Connect, which has been going on since 6 years and is even active during this pandemic. I have a student who I'm mentoring through this program remotely. So it's a visiting program for both undergraduate and masters. And it's a great way to get exposed to the research culture in Singapore and gauge whether Singapore is your preferred place for higher studies versus going to the West. So you can look up the website, which is also hyperlinked with the slide title. But here are some broad terms of the program. For the next cohort, I guess the deadline has the application window has already started from July 1st, 2021. There are 3 kinds of internships. There's a full term internship where you, like for instance, students at BITS do this practice school. So my intern currently in the group is doing his practice school as part of the NTU India Connect. From ICT, I guess the IPT makes most sense, where one looks at a summer internship, which is 2 months long. In terms of the eligibility, for an undergraduate student, they must have completed 5 semesters of undergraduate research, which is also, I guess, your semester after your 6th semester, which is the time when you do your IPT. So do consider the NTU India Connect for your in-plant training if it is allowed by ICT rules and regulations. Master students, if there are any on this call, then you can join this program after 1 year into your master's degree. In terms of the application process, it is very much like a grad school application where applicants submit their CV, transcripts, 2 letters of reference. It is evaluated by a panel and qualified candidates are then shared with faculty. Faculty then interview these qualified candidates to figure out whether there's any kind of a match. And I interviewed 3 or 4 candidates this time and recruited 1. Although if more were interested, I could certainly have recruited more. So somebody asked a question about remote internships. This is a great place to do a remote internship because such internships are available. And the projects offered are also such where you can remotely use NTU facilities. So it's not like you're on a Zoom call watching a researcher doing an experiment, but you're doing hands-on work, say on a supercomputer or something linked to the NTU system. So that's with the NTU India Connect. Now let's take a quick dive into what a strong application for a candidate looks like. And I speak from being for a nascent while on the other side of the table. That's my vantage point, basically. So good candidates have degrees from highly rated universities. ICT very much falls into that category. You only need to look at the universities which ICT, chemical engineering and technology students get admissions into. Many students ask about the GPA. The role of the GPA is not to look at the nearest 10th or the nearest 100th and then classify students, but to look at it more holistically. To look at core courses, for instance, how is the student faring with respect to the peers? The letters of reference also matter here because they give a quantitative metric. Is the student in the top 10%, the next 10%, in the top 50%, and so on? In my personal opinion, the GPA is more a metric for perseverance, willingness to be challenged, and dedication. All of us have gone through difficult courses in ICT. I probably went through it 8 years ago, but I still remember that Sahu sir's math course was not easy. I remember Gaikar sir's reaction engineering course nightmares. But the point was Mahajani sir's separation process. The point was that can we get through them? Who are the ones who are willing to be challenged, who can push themselves, and who can just get through that period? That's what a good GPA shows. And in my view, a good researcher has these traits. It's not about having an Einstein level intellect, but who is dedicated, who is willing to put in the hard yards. As Anirudh said, independent research is really important. By independent research, I mean being able to execute your idea, being able to analyze your own results, being able to present your own work, and perhaps even publish your own work. If you can achieve these things at the undergrad level, you for sure have a killer application when it comes to a grad school sort of triage mechanism. So let's look beyond into letters of reference. Personalized letters of reference are really important. Well, what do I mean by personalized? Let us say that we have Amar and Anusha as 2 applicants in the grad program. I read both their letters and then I change their names. Do the letters still read the same or do they look different? Do the letters corroborate the CV, the statement of purpose, and the overall application package? So if the letter is personal, then it has much more weightage than if it's some generic thing that, okay, the student is in the top 10%, his code is intelligent, is hardworking, and so on. So we'll discuss shortly how to request faculty to write such personal letters. But then comes to the next point is that there's also a tendency for students to write their own letters. As a student, we think who's going to tell? But in 1.5 years as a faculty, I can tell. I can tell if the letter is written by the student or if it's a sort of a personalized letter written by the faculty. So the other point is that the letter is not one-way communication. On multiple instances, I have written back to the letter writer seeking additional clarification. So do keep this point in mind as well. Coming to the statement of purpose, don't want to belabor too much, but really important to clearly articulate why do you want to pursue a PhD. Paraphrasing a discussion with one of my colleagues at a university in the US, they're looking for a real motive for a PhD, and it shouldn't be that this is a gateway to like secondary to like other ambitions within the West or something like that. So if you're ever asked in the interview, what do you want to do after the PhD? Give a targeted response. Say that, okay, you want to work in a top industrial R&D facility because you believe this will train you with critical thinking skills. Or say that you always enjoyed this academic setting, so you want to see whether the PhD will help you transition into an academic career path. Like give something specific, don't be generic. So then comes to the point, how does one obtain a personalized letter of reference? Get to know the faculty early on. By early on, I mean like year 1, year 2. In my batch also, there were many students in the 4th year scrambling to identify who will be my letter writers. You shouldn't be in that situation. And the answer is simple. Attend class, for instance. Meet faculty after class. Go and do research in their laboratories. Show genuine interest in the subject. Embrace lifelong learning. A faculty knows very well if can identify a student who is interested in the subject versus somebody who wants to pass the periodic test and the final exam. Research projects, something which Anirudh mentioned. This is also where international internships help because it expands your pool of letter writers. It gives some diversity to that category. I would recommend starting an internship early, as Anirudh did. He's a living example of that, a current on-the-call example of that. Because when he did his internship in 2018, he had a publication or a proceeding to show 1 year later. So if you do your internship in your 2nd year, it takes time to analyze the data, to craft the paper, and then to submit the paper. So if your goal is to have a paper appended with your application package, it's best to start in your 2nd year, because even starting in your 3rd year might be a little bit too late, as was for my case, since my paper was published 1 semester after I started grad school. Because the writing and the revision process does take some time. So the last thing which I want to discuss before handing over to Rabia is what I wish students do during advisor selection. If you're applying to Singapore, Europe, or Canada, advisor selection and admission to the program occur concurrently. So you have to select your advisor before you join. And advisor selection, in my view, is the most vital decision you make. Choose wisely. As Professor Dalvi told me when I was embarking on my journey, choose the person, not the project. At the undergrad level, we cannot have very strong likes or dislikes. We cannot be like, I really want to do tissue engineering, but soft matter doesn't appeal to me, because we don't know much about any of the fields. So be flexible, be willing to work with the person who you think will be the best mentor. Make sure the working styles match. Looking back at my PhD days, most of the times conflicts arose between students and their supervisors because they had different working styles. For instance, in a group where the supervisor expects independence and self-motivation, the student expected hand-holding. Or in a group where the supervisor wants daily updates, the student felt uncomfortable with that sort of arrangement. So make sure you get the working styles correct. How do you get the working styles correct? Ask these questions when you meet your potential supervisor. It is a two-way interview. It's your turn to do the background check. Ask them what their expectations are. What is the group policy with respect to weekend and sort of after hours work? If you're working in a biological lab, the cells don't stop at 5:30 p.m. So at times you may have to stay back to sort of finish the experiment. Then also ask about what the career paths of recent alumni are. What is the vacation policy like? This is an important criteria for international students who often want to visit home for 3 to 4 weeks at a time. Speak to current group members. Surprisingly, many will be candid. They were candid with me, and I am candid with the ones who do ask me. Attend group meetings if this will fit in your schedule. So this is the last thing which I want to discuss, and I'd be happy to take questions later on. So over to you, Rabia. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Tej. Great stuff. So we've covered a lot of stuff, with the overview, the SOPs, and now the detailed insight into the letters of recommendation. I hope that was helpful to all of you. And I'll hand it over to Rabia now. Zoom troubles. Oh, okay. Just give me a second, Rabia. Are you able to share now? All right.
Hello, everyone. Okay.
Fabulous.
Can you hear me? Can you see everything?
All good. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm very happy to be here to share my story about how I went through this process of applying to a master's and a PhD. And my focus will be mostly on the Netherlands and a little bit of Europe, because I don't know much about other European countries because I've been in the Netherlands for the last 6 years. So I will try to give you a bit of an overview of other countries as well. Okay. So I'll just start with my journey, which has been a bit, I wouldn't even call it non-linear, but it's really, I just kind of switched fields in between. So I started my Chem-Eng in 2008 and I ended in 2012 at ICT. And then immediately after, I got a job through the campus placement in L&T in Mumbai. And I was working there for a bit. And it was through during the chemical engineering studies and during my work where I sort of realized that my inclination had always been towards social sciences. So I like problem solving, but maybe not in a technical field, but in more of a social science field. And at the same time, I was not very happy with my job. And I think part of it was that we didn't have that many projects at work. So I had a lot of empty time on my hand, which actually I don't like. I really like to get into the middle of things. And another thing was that I also did not get along with my manager very well. So these two things really made me think of what I want to do. And because I had so much time on my hands, as a hobby, I would study psychology. So this was with pop science books, but with other things as well. And I did like a course that was like a distance course in psychology just to see if I really like it. And at some point I quit my job and then I had a few months off to really think of this. And I was thinking of applying for a master's in psychology outside of India. So I knew I wanted to do research, and I knew that psychology research is really underfunded in India. So my opportunities only existed outside. I was looking at the US and the UK, but I was more inclined towards the UK. I missed a lot of deadlines though, so I wasn't really sure what to do. And actually, when I was traveling in India during my free time, I met a few people from Denmark and Sweden who were surprised that I didn't know that in these countries, they also have English-speaking programs, because I was always under the impression that the UK has English-speaking programs, but not the other European countries. And this is not at all true. So from that point, I was really looking into the Netherlands, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, Finland as well. And then I basically chose Amsterdam. I also applied to another university, which is University of Twente. And this one was in social psychology. They mainly wanted my analytical skills to be good. They said that I could catch up with the literature. And I will go a bit more into the process of the masters. But basically, they accepted me even though I did not have a background in psychology. So what they did want from me was whether I knew statistics. And because we'd had some statistics courses at ICT, that was sufficient. And then during this time, I also did a research internship, which, as Rucha mentioned, basically I just asked for it. I asked a guest lecturer who came to my lecture, and I think this is really important. Like, you shouldn't be shy. You should really go for what you want to do. And most of the times, people are willing to work with you. I mean, they might not have funding for you sometimes, but I mean, this may be different in technical fields. But at least in psychology, it's still a possibility that you can get a lot of experience even without having the funding. And then I was looking for PhD positions, which are basically job positions here. And I had categorized based on topic and based on who I wanted to work with. And then I started my PhD in 2017. I'm very close to being done. I submit my dissertation in August, also looking for jobs now. So a lot of interviews going on this week, last week. Yeah, and I will speak about that in a bit. So that was my journey. And these were my guiding decisions, sort of, and I think this might also help you decide whether you want to do a master's or whether you want to do a master's and a PhD. So the first thing was to really figure out what I wanted to do. Like, I knew I wanted to do something else, but this was a really long process. And I basically made a list of universities. I went through every single program that they had and to see whether I was a match, whether I had enough credits, what was missing. Like, really detailed research on what university I wanted to get into. And the second thing that was also very important for me was where I want to do it. So I realized that through my life, I have made a lot of decisions based on where I want to be. So of course, it's a very important thing for me. So I chose a lot of my early, my bachelor's program and other decisions were made based on wanting to be in Mumbai. And at some point I wanted to move out. So it was also very important for me where I wanted to be. And the other thing was, am I eligible? So I think these are questions you should ask yourselves when you are applying for a master's or PhD, because it's better to take care of these questions early on. And the other thing was, how much will it cost me? So I know that US and UK are quite expensive, and I was very pleasantly surprised to know that the Netherlands it's still expensive, but really not as expensive as the US or UK. And of course, after all this, I still was very keen on making sure that I knew what I was doing, or basically what I wanted to do. Okay, so let me talk a bit about the education and culture in Europe. And a lot of this is from the perspective of the Netherlands. So the first thing is that cultures in Europe can vary a lot. So Germany and Netherlands can be very different and very similar at the same time. So you really have to go country by country if you're actually still deciding which country you want to study in. So from a Dutch perspective, I think the thing that stands out the most in the Netherlands is that there is very little hierarchy. So it's a very flat structure. I mean, of course, there are full professors, assistant professors, associate professors, but most people are on first name basis. So I basically call my promoter, who's the full professor on my supervision team, by his first name. And this is very normal in the Netherlands. The second thing is that the focus is a lot on applied learning. So for example, when I did my master's program, which was a research master, each course mostly had assignments. I barely had any exams. I think I had 2 exams in 2 years. And it was mostly assignment based, basically presentation skills, writing skills, and methodology based courses. So a lot of focus on applied learning. There is a very good work-life balance in the Netherlands. So now during my PhD, which is considered work, I mostly have worked 9 to 5. Very few people here expect you to work beyond that. In fact, if I send an email to my supervisors in the weekend, they will tell me that I shouldn't do that. So that's quite different, I think, from many places. And then there's a big biking culture here. So public transport is also very pretty good, but most people still bike to different places. So it's really like, if you do decide to move to the Netherlands, the first thing you should do is buy a bike. And the other thing about the Netherlands, so people are very open here, but people are also very direct here. And this can be quite difficult sometimes for people. So it can be quite a big culture shock because people are very critical, but they don't direct it at you as a person. They direct it at your work, which you have to learn not to take personally. So for me, this was actually a very nice change because I think it's very efficient. I would like people to criticize my work so I can improve it. And then it just saves time later. And the last thing is punctuality. Like, it's really, really valued here. Okay, so moving on to application procedures. So I think the first thing you can do is to kind of figure out what you want to study. And I've already mentioned a bit about, like, and also Rucha mentioned, like, to go through universities and the courses they offer. And I have noticed that in the Netherlands, there are a lot of these integrated courses. So for example, if you're from a technical background, you could do a course that's somewhere in the middle. So for example, there are a lot of courses related to technology and policy. And this is offered in like technical universities, but also in other public funded universities. So I had applied to a master's program in University of Twente, which is also actually where Dalvi sir studied for a bit, or I don't know if he did a postdoc there, but he was there for some time. And this university is very industry oriented. And they have a lot of focus on new innovations. And with that comes a group that basically does philosophy of technology. So they want engineers there, but they also want philosophers there. And they usually work together to make sure that any technological innovation that happens is value driven. So it also keeps in balance values and fairness for people who use it. And this was also very interesting to me. And most technical universities have this. So innovation and sort of these values go hand in hand. So the second thing is where. So you have a lot of options in Europe. So there's Netherlands, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, Spain, France. Sweden, I know, has a very nice technical university. The Netherlands has 4 technical universities. And the duration can vary. So I think technical universities have master's programs that are usually 2 years, but in other universities, so for example, for me, for social psychology, a research master is 2 years, but a regular master is only 1 year. So most master programs are actually only 1 year here. There are 4 technical universities. There's TU Delft, there's TU Eindhoven, there's Wageningen University, and there's University of Twente. And the other 8 universities, I think there are 8 more, are non-technical, but they're all public funded. And most of them have an interdisciplinary focus. So you can choose to do like a master's in chemical engineering, but you could also choose something like where with water, like they do a lot of water management here, which also comes under engineering because the Netherlands is mostly under below sea level. So they constantly have to work on new innovation to keep water from coming in. So, and these are places where really a lot of expertise meets. So they need chemical engineers, they need mechanical engineers, civil engineers, a lot of that. Okay, and I already mentioned this about the program. So there's regular masters and a research masters. Okay, and I think after that, you should be looking at whether you have the right credits. So I think if you've done a 4-year bachelor's, which is what you are doing, if you're at ICT, that's fine. But I know that many European countries do not accept the 3-year bachelor's that are there in India for Bachelor of Science, for example. And then they have a pre-master program, which basically helps you achieve the credits that you miss. So it's still possible for you to apply. But you should still check with the administrators what your current situation is. You can either give TOEFL or IELTS. It really depends on the university for the English proficiency. But I would suggest that the focus on this is super low because it's a non-English speaking country, and the score is really low that is required. So you probably shouldn't spend too much time on this. GRE and GMAT is usually not required, but some programs do require it. So I would suggest looking through that program's requirements specifically. Application costs are mostly 100 euros. Sometimes it's free. So for example, Twente was actually just free. And for the university I studied in, they had this deal where you basically pay 100 euros, but if you accept, so if they take you in and you accept that, then they refund the money. And this also is there in many universities. The study costs vary, so 12 to 16,000 a year. The living costs can also vary a lot by city. But again, you can really look at scholarship opportunities. So for example, I had a scholarship where basically any person who was not from the EU got an automatic scholarship, and they have a lot of these there because a lot of EU students, they have to pay a very low fee in the Netherlands. And to attract students who are from outside the EU, there are a lot of times scholarships which are specifically for non-EU students. And then you're not competing with a lot of people. So the competition becomes really low, and it is quite easy to get these. So keep an eye out for these scholarships. And the application dates are usually in March or April. But if you need to apply for a scholarship, you really need to meet the earliest date. Okay, and the application is, I guess, very similar to the US system mostly. So I won't go deeply into that. But one thing I want to add is that after you send in your application, usually you will get an email back from the administration where they give you an assignment. And this is mostly there in research programs, but it could also be there in other programs. And they really want to test your writing skills. So it will be an assignment where they basically test your critical thinking and your writing skills. So for example, I was given a research paper and I had to basically summarize the paper. What are the theoretical implications? What are the practical implications of the findings of that paper? So it's a very simple assignment, but it is there, and they do test your writing skills. Okay. So one of the biggest differences in Europe is that you cannot directly enroll into a PhD program after your bachelor's. So you have to do a master's. So it's pretty old school. It's kind of like India, actually, where you do a bachelor's, then do a master's, and then you can do a PhD. So you can only actually apply for a PhD in the Netherlands after you are done with your master's. And usually this starts, you can already start doing this at the end of your master's. So the positions start popping up. Yeah, they are very random, but they usually want an intake for September 1st or October 1st. And in most European countries, so this is excluding the UK, but in most other European countries, PhD is considered as work. So you really have a work permit, you pay taxes, you have a work contract, and you don't have a tuition fee. So there is no tuition. It's basically usually a 1-year contract, after which they extend your contract for 3 years more. And this is also the case in Germany, Switzerland, and some other countries. Although with Germany, what you should keep in mind is that they sometimes give a 50% contract. So the salary is actually half. And then you are expected to go to other universities to basically get a teaching contract so that you can fill up the rest of your time. Okay, and the salaries for the PhDs are pretty fixed. And over 1 to 4 years, this is what you get. And this is after taxes and other pension benefits and everything. There are some other benefits of doing a PhD here. So one thing is the 30% tax ruling. So if you move from India, say, to the Netherlands to do a PhD, you get, so 30% of your income is actually not taxed. You get a lot of travel reimbursements. So for example, when I moved from Amsterdam to Tilburg, where I am now, which is even within the country. But I was paid an amount of 4,000 euros upfront just for moving. And you get something that is called a 13th and 14th month salary. So in May, you get something called a holiday bonus, which is your 14th salary, I think. And in December, you get an extra bonus, which is the end of the year bonus. So these are basically 2 additional salaries. And the other thing, and I think I should have mentioned this for the masters as well. So this is quite different from the US system with visas and work permits. So the university sponsors your work permit. So if you have a contract, you basically send them documents, they do everything for you. You don't have to do anything. You just have to go in, I think, for biometrics and to hand in your passport. and then you get it back. There's no interview, nothing. It's a very simple process. And it's the same for a student visa. So student visa also, you send all your documents to the university and they take care of everything. And then you need a visa to enter the country and then pick up your residence card. And I think, like, for me, this was a breeze. Like, this was really amazing because I didn't have to do any of this stuff before I left. So I could focus on, like, okay, I have to take care of housing and stuff. So I had just more time to focus on those things. Okay, and some other big differences of doing a PhD in the Netherlands. So usually you are only in one lab, or you're usually under one professor. So a professor is basically your promoter. So every supervision team definitely has a full professor. And you can collaborate with other labs depending on what they think. So, I mean, I've mentioned a lot of words here. So promoter, advisor, supervisor, all same things. And usually it's a fixed project. So this will become a bit clear in a bit, but usually you are invited to join on a project. And you have multiple co-promoters. So these are people who are not full professors, but who could be basically the main supervisors that you work with. But usually you have a team of 2-3 people. And so I have 3 supervisors, for example. 2 are assistant professors, 1 is a full professor. I mostly work with 2 of the assistant professors, not as much with the full professor, but we always have our weekly meetings together. So I have a meeting every week, and I find it really nice. And they kind of see me as a collaborator, which I really like. Of course, this can be very different for different like teams. But for me, like, they wanted me to be quite independent with the project, and I really like that. So I've basically been the lead on all the projects that I've done so far. And this, I think, Tej and Anirudh also mentioned a bit of this about choosing your advisor. And I think this is really important because, like, I had a really bad manager in my previous work, and that really made me very picky about who I want to work with. And with advisors, it can really be a make or break situation. So when I had my interview, I was also kind of interviewing them in the sense that I had a lot of questions for them, but I was also seeing how they interact with each other, because when you have a bigger team, there's also a chance of conflict. So if they have conflict between each other, that's going to affect you as well. So it's also good to know whether they work together well. And I also asked my master thesis advisor, like, do you know these people? How are they as people? I also went for conferences when I was in my master's. So I could actually meet these people before I was applying for PhD positions. And I think you should really do that. The Netherlands, like, if you come here, the Netherlands is a very small country, and they always have like one national conference for every field. And you can basically meet everyone in the country who does research in this field. And it's a great way to just know who's out there, who's looking for, who has a new project, who got a new grant. Because if someone got a new grant, you know they're going to hire 2 PhD students soon. Okay, and then the PhD is usually 3 years if you take it without teaching, which is usually not advised. So it's always good to have a 4-year contract, and there you have around 10 to 25% teaching and supervision. So you can supervise bachelor thesis and also teach courses. And it's nice to have an extra year because you can get all your publishing done from all the data you have in 3 years. And it's also good to have some teaching experience if you plan to stay in academia, because this is really valuable. You can also get like a teaching qualification, which basically qualifies you to teach across the Netherlands. And I think this is very similar to what Tej mentioned about Singapore. So these contracts are very fixed. Extensions are only for extreme circumstances. So if you're really sick, you get an extension. COVID, I got an extension for 3 months. I could have gotten one for 6 months, but I didn't need it, so I didn't. But these only happen in very extreme situations. Okay, and there are like multiple pathways to apply for a PhD. So the most common one is through this website, which is Academic Transfer. It's a website for mostly Dutch and some Belgian academic positions. Usually you have to submit a CV, a motivation letter, references. Most of the times they only ask for names of references, and they usually call them up or email them to ask about you. And they also ask for writing samples, and these don't have to be publications. but these can just be your thesis that you're writing or some other project that you did, but they basically want to see how you write. And the interview can be 1 or 2 rounds, sometimes with a short presentation. And it's a fixed project. So you already know the topic of the project beforehand, and the supervisors are also fixed. So when you go into the interview, you should realize that these things are fixed, and always ask them about like, okay, how much leeway do I get in doing things? The second route that's not very common is getting an offer from your master thesis supervisor. So sometimes this is offered directly. They are like, oh, I have funding. You can work for me for 4 years. They have a work contract for you. But sometimes what they do is they have an external position that they are advertising, and they just include you directly in the interviews. So you don't go through the CV process because they already know you, but you still have to go through the interviews. And the third, which is also rare and very competitive, are research grants. So you can basically choose your supervision team in this beforehand and basically write a grant proposal for the topic that you want to research. So there is an organization called NBO, which basically funds a lot of research grants, and they also have something for PhDs. Okay, quickly go through future prospects. So after a master's here, of course, you can pursue a PhD. You can also go for an industrial job. So you should know that the employment rate in the Netherlands is really good. The unemployment rate is super low, and usually if you have a master's, you have a very good chance of getting a job. And the government pays a lot of money for people's education because the fees are quite low. And for them, it's actually useful to have you stay here and actually pay taxes, because then they can recover that money. So that's their process of inviting or having more international students here. And the Dutch healthcare system is great. It's quite cheap, and it can also be used across the EU. You also have, you can also travel across the EU, which is really nice. So as a PhD researcher, for example, if I wanted to work in Belgium for 6 months, I can do it without any changes to my visa. And that's really nice. And after your master's, if you don't get a job, you can stay on with an orientation year visa. It's a bit expensive. It's around 600 euros. But basically, this visa gives you full rights to work anywhere. So you can work in any job while looking for a job that you actually want. And after a PhD, of course, you can stay in academia. You can either do a postdoc, which is mostly short project, or you can be an assistant professor. So you can either choose a fixed term or a tenure track position. And usually tenure track positions means you are on a tenure track for 4 to 5 years, and then you're evaluated. And then you basically have a permanent position. The thing that is good to know is that usually people who get selected for a tenure track get tenure. Like, it's very rare situations that they won't get it. The other option after PhD is going into the industry or government. So for example, there are applied research organizations like TNO, which I interviewed with for like, I think 3 rounds now. So I next week I will hear whether I get the job or not. But they basically work as a research organization that gives advice to the government on policy. And this is really great because they really do technical research. They also do policy research. So my interest now is in policy because I basically study public attitudes towards new technology, and policy is really important in that case. And it's really nice that in the Netherlands, I think after someone gets a PhD, it's really 50-50 who goes into academia and who goes outside academia. And there are enough opportunities here. And you really can work as a researcher. So for example, the job that I applied to, which is a research scientist job in a policy lab, they basically do exactly the same thing that I would do in academia. The only difference is I wouldn't be writing academic papers. I would be writing policy reports to give advice to the government. And this is something that I really want to do. So it's really nice. So learning Dutch is not necessary. And this is the case in most countries. You can pretty much get by without learning the language. I think Germany might be a bit of an exception. But the thing is, you get a very big advantage if you do know Dutch. So I have learned Dutch to B2 level, which is pretty high. I can speak it not very well professionally, but I can have a conversation. And because of this, like, even though the job requires a Dutch, they basically say they could train me for a few months and that's it. But if you don't know Dutch at all, then it's very hard for them to train you because they have to start from scratch. So, I mean, if you go to a new country where there's a new language, it's really nice to learn it. And I think in Europe, it's really useful if you know languages because, for example, there are a lot of research positions at the EU level, and they really need you to know like at least 2 or 3 European languages. And there's a lot of research that goes on in technology, in defense, in the police. And these are just really good opportunities. And if you have any long-term plans, so for example, after 5 years, you are eligible for a PR and citizenship here. This was really important for me as well because I really wanted to move here, and I really liked the place. Yeah, and the nice thing is that if you are a citizen here, you can basically work and live anywhere in the EU. So I could work here, live in Belgium, live in Germany. It's really nice to have the flexibility. Also for your career path, because I mean, Europe is kind of like Netherlands is kind of small. So if you want to expand to go to a different country, it's still possible to do. You don't have to go through a lot of like technical, like visa procedures and stuff again. Yeah, so if you have any questions about any of these aspects, I'm willing to expand on that. But that's all, and you can contact me through these channels. Okay.
Thank you, Rabia. Again, really great information, very comprehensive overview of Netherlands and the European research and future study options available to people. So we are running over time, everybody. It's 10 minutes beyond what we thought we'd end at, but we've been getting amazing information from all of our panelists. So I hope you're taking notes and you're enjoying that. What we'll do is we'll probably stay on for another 10-15 minutes to try and answer some of the pigeonhole questions because it's getting quite late for a few of our panelists out there. And what I'll do is let me start sharing my screen and we'll quickly answer a few questions. Some of the questions have already been answered. So if you go to the question panel, you can click on a comment and you can see that, some of the questions have already been answered. So what we'll try and do is we'll keep this a little focused and try to answer a couple of questions. Let's go with the highly voted ones. I do want to let people know in the audience that none of us have a B.Pharm or an M.Pharm degree. Unfortunately, we can just give some generic advice on this end. But as Rucha and others have mentioned, feel free to tap into the alumni network. You'll be able to find people who can get these questions answered to you in a more targeted fashion. But this question is related to finding scholarships, aids, grants for meritorious and financially needy students. Anirudh and Rucha did go over some of these options in their talks. So, Narottam, Seksaria and things like that. But maybe, Anirudh, do you want to just quickly give a few options available and then we'll tell them to look up your slides later.
Sure. So the thing is, I mean, most of these, like what you're referring to as M.Pharm, like in the US, they're either like MS in cosmetics or MS in pharmaceutical sciences. Those are the degrees that are dealt with in the US. Now, from the top, at the top of my head, I know like a few universities now, but they all follow the same scholarship process that any other Indian student would follow. Like if you're all, I guess everyone is an Indian here. So mostly all of these things follow the same scholarship process in US and Canada, from what I know, from all my friends who are pursuing these degrees. Yeah. So I don't think anything would be different in that.
Absolutely. Agreed. And again, please go back to the YouTube recording. Rucha and Anirudh have mentioned several good resources where you can find these scholarship opportunities. Again, I want to just mention that, this question has received a lot of upvotes, and I don't want to just ignore that. I do want to mention that please reach out to seniors who pursued BPharm and MPharm. And as Anirudh said, the degrees offered in countries abroad, like the US, is Masters in Pharmaceutics. So the school you'll probably be looking for is, anything like pharmacy or pharmaceutics. Sometimes it can come under the College of Engineering. So pharmaceutical engineering is an option. And I know, several people from ICT have gone on to pursue their degrees in pharmaceutics. So definitely look up these options. And having been in the US and in the field of pharmaceutical sciences, I can attest that US is an absolutely wonderful country to pursue your research in pharmacy, medicine, biotech, life sciences. There's a lot of opportunities over here. But again, if you're interested specifically in a pharmaceutics degree, please reach out to alumni who have done this. Okay, maybe we'll just go to the next highly upvoted question: how to connect with students and ask them for insights, and even professors. So maybe Tej, if you can just quickly say, what kind of messages would you like to see when people approach you, or what sort of things you entertain, and then we can get insight from Anirudh.
Right. So I'd say that that'd be two broad categories of questions. One category which focuses on the program specific details, like for instance, what should be the application packet, or is there any format for the SOP? Should I submit a CV with the application? The second is more research focused questions. So for the first kind, I would request people to contact the grad program admin, whose names and email IDs are clearly mentioned on every university website. For the second kind, more linked with research, most faculty will reply on their own time. Those who are good with emails will reply fast. Some may not reply, but any emails in general to anybody, whatever their level is, make sure it's personal and not copy pasted. Because I get copy pasted emails. Even while this webinar was on, I got a couple copy pasted applications.
Yes. So personalized, direct, short emails, as Anirudh mentioned, I think those are likely to get more answers. Again, our panelists have given some more insights, so go to the comments to see more insights into that question. All right. Any questions that's standing out to any of you? Maybe we'll go for this question: some light into various aspects of sandwich PhD. So I guess, it's something you touched upon, the India-Singapore alliance, things like that. Are there any such programs in Europe? So again, we know Tej talked about the India-Singapore alliance. So please, again, go back and check out what he mentioned about the CREATE program and things of those sorts in his talk. But in Europe, Rabia, are you aware of any such sandwich programs or dual country programs?
So, it really depends on the funding. So, for example, a lot of grants that are available here sometimes require you to have finished a master's here. And then basically, if you're not doing a master's here, it becomes difficult. But I know, for example, a lot of students who say are doing a PhD in India can come here for like a 1-year stay in someone's lab, and that's very much possible. So I wouldn't call it a sandwich PhD, but you could still do part of your projects in a lab here. And usually, if you have funding, no one will say no to you, because you will bring the funding, or rather you will support yourself while you're here. But if that is difficult, then then you might need to have a scholarship or some kind of grant for that. I think in Germany there should be something related to engineering, because I know a lot of my friends were planning to go for that. But I really don't know much about it, because I also didn't look into it.
I could add to that. There's this DAD thing. So just visit the DAD website, DAAD. they have all the details, and they have some specific programs that are for students who are pursuing their PhD in India. And I remember like in 2017 or something, we had a session by some admin people who had visited ICT from that. So just visit the website and you'll get some more details about it. That's for Germany at least. But for the US, I guess it purely, as Rabia mentioned, it depends on the collaborations with that labs have with various universities. So if there's a professor who has some very good contacts with, who's collaborating with another professor abroad, so they just send one of their students there to perform experiments or work on their supercomputers, and then they come back and they get a couple of publications in the process. So you have that's the idea of like a PhD, a collaborative PhD. I mean, you might not get to do coursework, but you get to do a bit of research with them, have some hands-on research at their lab. So that's about it.
Great, thank you. Again, as you can see, a lot of questions have already been answered. So, in the interest of time, we'll end our official Q&A session here. As I mentioned, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to stay on, and a couple of us will hang out at the end and we'll try to get your questions answered informally. And before ending, I just want to quickly give a preview of everything that's coming up next. We have our Inspire Career Guidance session next, and another Achieve workshop. The Inspire talk is on breaking convention. You're all aware of the typical career paths available to us and have a fair understanding of how to pursue them. But as you probably noticed in Rucha's and Rabia's segments today, there are a lot of paths available that we don't really think about and are exciting, and our engineering and technical training do come in handy. So in this session, you'll have Yutika and Aparna talk about their journeys and speak a little bit about the paths that we don't normally think of and how do you go about pursuing them. After that, we'll be back with an Achieve workshop, which will be a nice continuation of today's session. It's on how to write an SOP. We'll have Rucha again and our very own Professor Dalvi, who will be leading this session. They'll go into more detail about what makes a great SOP and give you further insight into that aspect. So we'll be sending out announcements again about these sessions on our website and social media handles. So be sure to keep an eye out for them, and we do hope to see you there. And finally, we're at the end of our workshop. I do want to thank the panelists for their time and sharing their journeys and giving us a lot of valuable tips and very comprehensive insight into the whole process of applying for MS or PhD abroad. Again, Tej, Rucha, Rabia, Anirudh, we really appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. I do want to thank the team at Spark and ICT Social Media for their continued support and doing all the behind the scenes work that makes these sessions possible. And please do leave your feedback for this session. We love to see how we're doing and what we can do to make these sessions even better and helpful to you all. You'll see a link pop up in the chat. It'll just take 20 to 30 seconds. We would really appreciate if you would leave us some feedback about how you find today's session and what we can do in the future. You can go to our website, follow us on social media channels, join the WhatsApp groups to get timely updates and registration links for all of our sessions. And lastly, if you find these sessions useful and you think more people could benefit from this, please do share these with your friends and colleagues. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today, and thank you so much for staying on a little bit extra. You may now exit the webinar, but if you wish to stay back and unmute yourselves to chat with us, again, as I said, a few of us will be hanging around, and we'll be able to answer any questions that we haven't gotten to yet. So thank you, everybody.